Well, right up there, this is, as you know, the Roman Empire, and the red area is Galatia. Galatia was settled by the Celts about 300 BC, and Paul ministered to them, right? And he established a church there. And I'm gonna set my timer here. And David, if you go to the Word file. Okay, so what we're going to talk about is who? We're talking about Paul and the Galatians. And what is the subject? The subject is legalism, or the Judaizers of that day, who were trying to convince the Christians that they had to follow the Mosaic law, that they had rules that they had to follow to be good Christians. And written about 50 to 57 AD, and as you saw, modern day Turkey. And that was, of course, under the Roman Empire. Like I said, the Celts moved in about 300 BC, and then the Romans came in about 100, 150 BC, and now at 50 AD, it's still under Roman rule. And so how did he send this message? He sent it by letter so that we can have it, which is great. And why? Okay, Paul was contending for the truth of the gospel. He's contending for grace. Paul's point is that by grace through faith alone, man is justified. And by faith alone, he lives out that new life in the freedom of the Spirit. Now, the people of the Galatians church, they were called Gentiles by the Jews. And the word Gentile is a Latin word, and that was what they called the folks that were not Jewish. And the Jewish or Hebrew word was goyim, and that just means nations. So goy is Hebrew or Yiddish for Gentile. It just means nations other than the nation of Israel. The Galatian church, it was known when Paul was there, when he was ministering, for its love, for its unity, for its grace. But when Paul left, false teachers gained influence after Paul. When Paul left to continue his ministry, and so the false teachers wanted to require the Galatians to follow the Mosaic law, dietary rules, circumcision, some of those other rules they had. They claimed Paul was not a true apostle, all right? And they said they were connected to the true apostles, Peter, John, James, and the other apostles who actually walked with Jesus when Jesus had his earthly ministry. So in the first two chapters, chapter 1 that David gave last week, and chapter 2 we're doing today, so Paul is setting the record straight on these issues. And he's also talking about his own relationship with the apostles. And so he focused on his relationship with Peter, with John, and Jesus' half-brother James, all right? If you guys chose to read, yeah, you have your numbers, or anyone have their number? So who's got verse 1?
I do.
Okay, do you want to read verse 1?
Just a second, where am I?
Second page.
Okay.
How about second
Because I
page?
don't-
Just read the first
I
verse.
forgot my phone at home, and I usually have my Bible on my phone. Okay. Then after an interval of 14 years, I went up again to Jerusalem with Barnabas, taking Titus along also.
Okay. So when he says 14 years, that's probably 14 years after Paul's conversion. All right. And now Paul did spend about 15 days with Peter, and that was 3 years after his conversion. Now Paul met with Peter. He also met with John and James 14 years after his conversion. The apostles extended friendship, encouragement, and it really encouraged Paul to continue in his apostolic ministry. All right? Okay, verse 2. So that's verse 1. Verse 2.
It was because of the revelation that I went up and I submitted to them the gospel which I preached among the Gentiles, that I did so in private to those who were in, say, Thank you. For fear that I might be running or had run in vain.
Okay, so Paul says he had a private meeting with the leading apostles, the apostles of reputation, you know. Paul will mention these apostles by name later, all right? Okay, so 3.
But not even Titus, who was with me, though he was a Greek, was compelled to be circumcised.
Now what does that mean, he was a Greek? That means he was not Jewish. All right? You got Jews and Greeks, you know. Who knows where he was from, you know, Macedonia, whatever, but he's called a Greek. And did they compel him to be circumcised? No, no. Why is this an important point? Well, why is he bringing that up? Because the false teachers in Galatia were saying that now, to be good Christians, to be good followers, you need to be circumcised. You need to follow the Mosaic law.
But he's saying that they were actually not being consistent because of this.
Yes.
Obvious.
Thank you. Thank you. Paul's pointing out an inconsistency, right, in the leading apostles. See, the false teachers say, now, Paul's not a real apostle. We follow the true apostles. Okay. And what Paul is saying, hey, those true apostles, in parentheses, were saying, they didn't say that Titus had to be circumcised. Right? All right, big point. 4?
So I have a question,
Yeah,
not to be gross or anything,
yeah.
but what were they doing, going around doing a circumcision check?
No, I think that
Who is and who's not?
right. Oh, David's got an answer. Thank you,
I thought
David.
about this. I had that thought too. You know, now, the Romans had their public baths, and they didn't have urinals, and this proves the need for stalls and bathrooms.
Good point. So they're still doing the check, they're staring and saying, oh, here's your guy.
But they're coming out of the public baths, is my guess. But
Okay. That or they may have taken their word for it. I don't know. You know.
But about that,
Yes.
the Nazis,
Mm-hmm.
that's how they knew who were Jews, even though they were trying not to be overtly, okay? They examined.
Wow.
And that's how they knew.
Right.
They went around to all those countries.
I wouldn't ever even follow that.
Right.
Okay, verse 4.
Verse 4.
But it was because of the false brethren secretly brought in, who had sneaked in to spy out our liberty, which we have in Christ Jesus, in order to bring us into bondage. But we did not yield in subjection to them for even an hour, so the truth of the gospel would remain with you.
Okay. And you, now I hope you don't mind, would you mind reading the New Living Translation on the next page?
That next step.
Yeah.
Even that question came up only because of some so-called believers there, false ones, really, who were secretly brought in. They sneak in to spy on us and take away the freedom we have in Christ Jesus. They wanted to enslave us and force us to follow their Jewish regulations.
All right.
You want me to read comments?
No, that's good. I'll just comment on that. Okay. So, religions, there's a lot of religions in the world, right? Religions all have a set of rules that people need to follow to get to go and be closer to God, right? To be right with God, you gotta follow the religious rules. Okay, religions are void of grace, all right? The religious leaders were Christ's number one enemy when he was ministering on earth, weren't they?
the Pharisees, yeah.
The Pharisees, right?
Sadducees.
Did he have really a lot of trouble with the common people? No, the common people accepted his message and loved him and saw that, hey, this is different. But the religious leaders were intimidated by this. And they were really quite hostile to his acts of grace, weren't they? And sometimes but we got to give it to Jesus. He did provoke them by healing on the Sabbath, by doing some things that he knew
He knew would get their vote.
would create an argument to make his point, right? That was what he was there for. He wasn't there to get along with people, was he? Remember he said that? Right. He was there to divide. So the religious, so like I said, the religious leaders were waiting for him to break the Sabbath. Now the motive of religious people, it's like almost any other world system. What are the world systems for? But to control people, right? And the world systems use religion to control people also, don't they? And there are some people who like to control other people. They're out there. And some of those control people, they're in lots of different fields, right? They're in government, they're in science, but there are also some control freaks that are in religion, right? And so that's their objective. Now, we still have that today, okay? We still need to continue the battle for grace, right? You see that point? What he was trying to say? Who's got 5? Keep going.
But we refused to give in to them for a single moment. We wanted to preserve the truth of the gospel message for you.
Okay, Paul did not give it an inch. Okay, now what truth? And I was going to save number 16 for a special person. So 16, Nancy, would you please read 16? I didn't give it to you.
Nevertheless, knowing that a man is not justified by the works of the law, but through faith in Christ Jesus.